Hi, Patrick here. Have Cheeto View, and we're here for another film review. But this one might be a little weird because we're gonna dive deep into this one. So this week we had a guest on the show, Eric Hanson, who starred in the movie Nefarious. Nefarious is a 2023 film that was uh, was actually directed by co-directors Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman. Was based off a book by Steve Dace. The story is it's pretty interesting. This is a at first glance. At first glance, this is a first. In fact, it's a faith-based horror movie. Faith-based horror movie. In Nefarious. Nefarious is not a religious horror film. It's not religious. Not it's not supernatural, like ghost or their idea of a demon is normal is different from what normally is portrayed as a demon or demonology, or possession. Um, the story is of a well, first the movie opens up and we see a gentleman who's looks like he's getting ready to go home. He's got papers and suitcase. He's distinguished looking, and he's locking up everything, and he leaves. He goes up the elevator, and then we see him fall. He has committed suicide. So the movie opens up with that. Then we meet the new psychiatrist, Dr. James Martin, who's coming to the jail to determine if a convicted serial killer named Edward Wayne Brady is sane or insane. If he is declared insane, he will not be put to death. If he is declared sane, of course he will be put to death that day. So the doctor is there to determine whether the prisoner is sane or insane. So he comes in, and the warden he warns him. He warns the doctor, Dr. Martin, that this prisoner is very manipulative and is pretty much responsible for the suicide death of the other psychiatrist. And so he warns him to be very, very careful when dealing with him. Well, Dr. Martin feels pretty confident that he can walk in there, and he has something to prove too, because Dr. Fisher, the gentleman who we saw leap in the beginning of the movie, leap off the building, well, it was his teacher and a mentor. So Dr. Martin gets to work, and we see the gentleman who he's going to be talking to, and that's he calls himself Nefarious. That's what he wants to be known as, Nefarious, and he is also in possession of Edward's body. And he immediately shows his skills and supernatural intent by basically telling James or Dr. Martin everything there is to know about him right off the bat. He knows who he is. He knows his background. I mean, now this is a gentleman on death row with no access to any of that. Not to that extent. Not to that extent at all. So right off the bat, we see that, wow, this guy is he's rather formidable. And he says that he is a demon possessing this body, Edward's body. So the doctor, of course, he says, well, he's an atheist, so that's going to let him off the hook, which causes Nefarious to laugh hysterically, and saying, "What do you think that is going to get you out of any place?" And then they start breaking down, and they talk about possession. They talk about the evil between man and between God and Satan, and how men was created in God's image to replace the fallen angels. And they have discussions with this. I mean, it's a deep discussion. They talk about and Nefarious also accuses Martin that before the end of the day, he'll commit 3 murders. He'll commit 3 murders before the end of the day. The doctor says, well, that's going to be impossible since I'm sitting right here. I have no intention of killing anybody. and what have you. So of course Nefarious again flexes and shows that his knowledge is more than just normal, and he tells Martin, he says, "Well, I think I can convince you that there will be 3 murders this day." And the first thing he does, he accuses Dr. Martin of murdering his mother by euthanasia. His mother was very, very sick. They went to Oregon and had assisted suicide. But Nefarious calls that murder, and because and Martin did it was because Martin was going to inherit over $3 million. Of course, Dr. Martin gets really upset at that and says he did not kill his mother. His mother was in desperate pain, and it was a peaceful way out. And we see Dr. Martin lose his cool for the first time, and shows his reaction to Nefarious's prodding. He's pretty soon he's arguing with this prisoner about that incident. But then he also threatens to walk out. But then he calms down and he realizes that, well, maybe this prisoner, maybe this Edward guy, maybe he just has a multi-personality. Dissociative identity disorder. Could be have multiple personalities due to the stress or the, of being either in prison or the stress of the guilt that he has in him being a convicted serial killer and all. So he tries to bring out the Edward into, come talk to him, Edward, and to bypass Nefarious. And we meet Edward, and Lord knows you instantly feel bad because it looks like he has been totally possessed by this creature, and he had no control over what he has done. And he is a very shy, meek man. He doesn't look like at all capable of doing any of the hideous things. He's very, very low IQ. It would just take nothing but for Dr. Martin to write insane and let him stay alive. But Nefarious, he allows only a little bit at a time. He only allows him to show that side, and then Nefarious comes back and takes over Edward again and suppresses him. And so he goes ahead and gets back into it with Dr. Martin. Now, then they start talking about different religious point of views, especially since he's listening to Nefarious explain how the house has been, between God and Satan and the angels and everything else. He's just been listening to this, and he finally says, it's true that Edward is insane. He's insane. I'm going to go ahead and mark it off that. And of course, Nefarious doesn't want him to do that. Nefarious wants Dr. Martin he wants to work with Dr. Martin. He wants Dr. Martin to be Nefarious's voice after. And 2 is that he wants to die. He does not want to be alive. He does not want to be declared insane. He wants to ride. And because it's not going to hurt him. It's going to kill Edward, but it's not going to hurt him because he's a demon. He'll just go on to the next host. And so, as Dr. Martin says, well, I'm done with this. I'm going to go ahead and tell him that you're insane. And then Nefarious comes back, says, what about your girlfriend? Did you know the girlfriend that you're going to break up with? You're not in love with her. And she is down there right now at the clinic. She is having an abortion. And she thinks that she's doing it for you, whereas the fact that you don't want her anymore. And in about 30 seconds, it's gonna end. Now, this is the part of the movie where it started just to creak a little bit, like something was triggered in the back of my head, and I'm going like, that's really heavy-handed for a horror movie. Really heavy-handed. And so I'm just like, I'm watching this. I'm engaged with it still, but I'm thinking to myself that there's more to this than what it appears to be. So of course, Dr. Martin, he's desperately trying to call his girlfriend, just to let her, just to see if that's true. He does find out that, yes, indeed, that's what his girlfriend has done. She has gone down to the abortion clinic and she has had an abortion. So now Dr. Martin is really, really shaken up by that, and you know, and of course, Nefarious tells him about the history of abortion. You know, about the different idols being worshipped and children being sacrificed. You know, all historically accurate, or as much as possible. So, so that's murder number 2. And so, you know, again, the Doctor and Nefarious go at it once again, and it's interesting. The dialogue is really interesting, and so they go after it. And Nefarious always refers to his master as master. He never calls him the devil or Satan or anything else. He just calls him his master, and he wants Dr. Martin to write a book. To deceive and mislead all of God's created human race. He wants him to be a spear, you know, head of the spear as far as leading the world, you know, down the path. But he already says that the world is already on the path, which he's right about. He is right about. He comments about how TV, movies, and media have desensitized the human race. We don't feel evil anymore. We don't even recognize it anymore because we've been slowly it's slowly infiltrated us, and we as a human race don't know between right or wrong anymore. I had to give him credit for that one. So of course, then all of a sudden, you know, as Dr. Martin is really shaken to the core, the warden calls him out and tells him, brings him into Edward's cell, and inside of it are 2 things. One, the book that Nefarious wants Dr. Martin to publish, and 2, he's got a book, a handwritten book of everything about Dr. Martin. There's no human way that he could have known any of that. In fact, Dr. Martin says, there's pictures in here that I didn't even know existed. The warden says, well, you know, it'll be very really beneficial if you would just sign off on that, you know, because he's outside and he's really shaken. He says it'd really be really behooving to you to go ahead and make the right thing and call him insane, or call him sane, so we can get done with this. And at the time, as this is happening, we see that once again we see the host Edward try to come out. They ask him what he wants for his last dinner. He's just crying. He's weeping. He's just absolutely terrified. He doesn't know how he got there. He knows it's not him. He didn't do any of these things. He's possessed, and he tries to give a last meal. And before the guard gets out of there, he turns around as Nefarious and says, "I'm not hungry," again suppressing him, taking him over. So as it gets closer to execution, you know, Martin is he's desperate. He's crying. He's scared. I mean, he's totally terrified, and he's not going to die by the lethal injection. He's going to die since he's in Oklahoma. He can be a candidate for the electric chair, and that's what Nefarious has had him choose. He's had him choose the electric chair. He says because it'll make the suffering that much longer. He says they never kill you the first time through. And anybody who's watched the Sin City will have to agree with that. Well, he says it takes 2 times generally for someone to die on the electric chair. So it's gonna be a long process. Well, they finally get to they finally have their last battle here, and basically, and Nefarious is shown to be able to dislocate fingers on his hand, and he dislocates a wrist. He manages to break free. He fractures his wrist, or he dislocates it with no pain to himself, no evident pain. But he draws Martin in, and he looks like he's gonna capture. You know, he takes him hostage, and then none of the guards can do anything. Neither can the warden. And he says, I want you to beg for your life. I want you to tell me that you don't want to die. And so Dr. Martin says, in order for that to not happen, he has to agree. But in doing so, Nefarious just points out, there you go. You do have limitations. And so Martin gets released, and the guards thump Martin. They thump him, and not Martin, but they thump Edward. And then Martin gets up and gets the execution order, and he says that Nefarious is absolutely sane. He is guilty, and he is sane, and he's going to die that night. So, they go to the execution room, and what happens in the execution room is something you'll have to see for yourself. Now, I'm watching this movie, and I'm going to admit, I'm watching this. I heard about it. I talked to our guest, Eric Hanson. I was really intrigued. I guess the first warning bell I should have had about this movie was seeing Glenn Beck. That was a little weird. That set off a little tingle in there, going like, "What's he doing in here?" So I'm watching the rest of the movie, and it's okay. It's a good movie. I can't deny that. It's an interesting movie. Sean Patrick Flanery as Nefarious, outstanding. Holy crow. A consistent, terrific performance. For anybody who's doing horror awards like Fangoria Chainsaw from the Fangoria, you got to include him into any acting awards or nominations, because that was a sensational performance. The gentleman who played the Doctor is new to me, and that is Jordan Belfi. And he definitely came across like a Jim Caviezel type. In fact, he looked a little bit like Jim Caviezel, and I don't think that was by accident. So he was really solid as well. And yes, now while this movie is considered a horror movie because of the scene of the execution was shown. There was also one curse word and a couple of scenes of the Doctor and the warden smoking. I dare say that, as far as the faith-based film goes, it could fit. It's very, very wavers, very, very close to that not being. But I would sit there and say that yes, this is a faith-based horror film. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean it's from the heart, because when I looked and to see a little bit more about this movie, I found out that it was written by a right-winger, a right-wing extremist. He has he's part of Glenn Beck's Blaze Media. He is a Republican through and through. And now I know where you guys are saying, well, what's with that? Why are you pointing that out? Because there is a lot of diatribe in there. The fact that they're pushing how abortion was evil, yet not staying quiet on the fact of everything else, like gun violence. It's a warning sign. They had tried to make a horror film by using political. They made a political stance in a faith-based horror film. Now, you can watch this movie two ways. You could watch it as just a movie, a horror movie. You could watch it as a faith-based movie, or you can be a little bit more pragmatic about it and look at it for what it was, which is right-wing propaganda. Now, I'm sort of torn right here in this review, because I want to tell you how damn good this movie was, because it really was good. But I would also be remiss if I didn't comment that the fact that it was a piece of right-wing propaganda, and a lot of it was what was said in there is heavy-handed as hell. And I do think that it affects the movie, and that's a damn shame, because this movie did not need to have anything in it at all. But of course, since it was written by a right-wing extremist, that's what you get. So at the end of the movie, we see Glenn Beck interviewing the Doctor. For the last 10 minutes, Glenn Beck gets his time here. I just really am. I guess I'm just disappointed. And I'm really disappointed for the actors involved in it, because I'm sure that when they signed up for this movie, this is not what they were getting themselves into. They did not know this is going to be this movie. Yeah, we're going to have you come in there and be in a right, because there's another movie like this called, that did this, that did a lot of right-wing, heavy-handed messaging. And the actors going like, we had no idea what we were getting into. This is not what we signed up for. But they did the movie anyway, but it's not who they were. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes, because a lot of movies aren't going to sit out there and casting directing and tell you this is a religious movie. This is going to be a faith-based movie. I mean, some people know it, but in this case, I dare say that the actors probably did not know this is what they were getting into. Now that I've seen this movie, that would be one of the questions I would ask Eric. Did he know? I have a feeling it would be no. And he was really good in his role too, by the way. He had 3 scenes. They were really good. Yes, Eric, you were outstanding. I thought he was outstanding. Acting is good in this movie. I mean, that's what really hurts the most when I'm talking about this movie this deep, because this movie it's interesting. It's interesting. Now, I'm not sure if the people who wrote it, based on Steve Dace's Nefarious plot, I'm not sure if Carrie and Chuck are part of Blaze Media. I'm not sure if they just bought the rights to the book and decided to make it on their own. I guess I would have to look a little bit more into that, which I plan on doing so. I do know that Blaze Media did probably put up some money into the budget, which is why we're getting the heavy-handedness, and we're also getting Glenn Beck in there for about 15 minutes. I'm sure that Blaze Media had their hand in the financing of this movie. That's dangerous. That's dangerous, because they can influence on what the movie is going to be about and the screenplay, and use that for their own agenda. So the right wingers are always complaining about the lefties are always using movies for their own purposes, diversity and all that. Well, guess what, boys and girls, you can do the same. And in case of Nefarious, he did. Now, I have high hopes that in the sequel, hopefully there will be more of a division, and Chuck and Carrie Solomon and Chuck Konzelman, they will develop their own story, develop their own plot, and they won't necessarily need to be beholden to Blaze Media going forward. We'll see. Did I like this movie? Yes. Well, can I recommend it? Yes. But I also want you to know that it comes with an asterisk on it, and that is, do your research on this movie if you want to see exactly where it came from. I think it's important that you know that. All right, so that's it. A deep dive and on Nefarious, and thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button for this as review as well. You can feel free to share it out and drop a comment. If you've seen Nefarious, I'd like to hear your thoughts about that. Give me your thoughts. What do you think about it? If you didn't see this aspect of this, go back and rewatch the movie. Rewatch it, and you can start seeing what I was talking about earlier. But then again, you might not want to. That's cool as well. All right, that's it for me and the Cheetah. We are out of here, and thank you for watching and listening, and we will talk to you soon. Peace.